Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of the Beaker, the weekly show about the design, the ducks, and the strategy of Keyforge. That's your favorite. That's my favorite. That's his favorite. Everybody's favorite. Unique deck game. Absolutely, so much indeed. I am JT Russell Toporbigos, and no quick draw this evening, but no worries. If you find yourself needing a little bit more Mr. Miyagi Zen in your life, my co-host this evening can help you get that Astroph. Already the groans. Excellent. Off to a good start, folks. Welcome indeed, Astron, back to the bottom of the beaker. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I was, as you were introducing the episode, I was waiting for the quick draw puns, forgetting that quick draw is not here. Um, but I'm glad that you managed to find one with my name instead.
Absolutely, we are a sucker for nothing if not tradition. And yeah, that was pretty punny, Chad. Thank you. I was proud of that one. I don't know, and I meant to get the hand motions in too. I didn't quite make it happen, but you can imagine what Astron looks like. Yeah, joking with Astron too that you are approaching kind of the like max royalty levels for the show, and we have a fun topic in store for this evening. We may have to get you back on in short order once Quick Draw can join us too to dig back into it. But I'm very excited to be talking about this with you this evening. It's going to be a lot of fun. Uh, do you want to tell us indeed what the topic we have in store? The chat, after reading it incorrectly, got very excited for a second. Hopefully they're still excited when they see what's up.
Yeah, we are not looking at Asheron's behind. That is not happening. But I came on today to talk about the kind of the different states of the game of Keyforge. So, in like any racing game, you're going to be at some point you're going to be behind or ahead. There's not really any other options, and so uh, I wanted to, I guess, talk with JT about what kind of decisions we need to make or can make in each of these points of the game because I've been a lurker in a lot of TCO games recently because I guess I decided I don't really care too much about playing, but rather watch people play. I don't know. I just enjoy watching people play to see what they do. And I noticed I guess, some habits that people have in each of these parts of the game. And it would be cool to talk about those things.
Absolutely. It's actually kind of a fun bit of serendipity that you had suggested this topic. I think right before, excuse me, you came up and said, "Hey, this would be a fun thing to talk about." Quick Draw was in a game with me and was watching my play, and he says, "Gosh, you took this turn, and you ended the turn at 7, and it could have been 10." And maybe you could have done that better, you dum dum. And he was probably right, and maybe I should have. But my thinking at the time was my opponent's only bit of amber control remaining is an effervescent principle or whatever it was, and for purposes of playing against EP as my opponent's final out, 7 and 10 are kind of the same. And so I was thinking, let's not try and max out the amber generation. Let's try to leave ourselves in the best possible situation if they do have the one answer they've got left. And maybe as the case happened, I forget if I was like miscounting and they had other options too, but that was the thinking, that was the reasoning. And so we were kind of chatting like, hey, this is a cool moment, maybe it's something that we can make into a topic. And then you were vibing our wavelengths, our brainwaves, I suppose, and put this so cleanly. So I appreciate it, and I'm excited because I think those are some situations that come up more often than folks want to think they come up, or maybe they just aren't used to sitting and looking at a game and saying, yeah, I'm ahead. Is there a way I should adjust my play differently? Or I'm behind. Is there a way I should adjust my play to play differently? Quick draw in the chat tonight, not behind the mic, but in the chat saying he was not right. Well, I don't remember the situation, quick draw, but I'll take it.
It sounds like you saved your resources for the next turn. EP came, and then you just went back to check again. From the
Hmm.
sounds of quick draws, comment.
I'll take it. I'll take it. But anyway, so this is fun. I think I don't know. Maybe wow, a bunch of ways we could approach this. I think how about we kind of break it into some segments and tackle playing from behind or even or ahead, or is there a different way you think makes sense to approach?
No, I think that sounds like a very reasonable way to go about it. So I guess talk about playing from behind because I feel like that's like I don't know these things in my head have an order of smallest, big, medium, largest. Even though that's just how my brain looks at these three topics for some reason. I don't know why, but categorizing them even though they're already categorized. But yeah, anyway, sorry for that tangent. Playing from behind. I guess the important thing to look at with playing in from behind is what really when are you actually playing from behind? Like because my eyes playing from two amber behind is not really playing from behind, but I guess does that along that lines does it change depending on where we are in the game's turns as well? Those are the
Hmm.
things that I think about at least.
Yeah, this is an interesting question, right? Like, what does it even mean to be behind in a game of Keyforge, right? It's a racing game, but I think I'd agree with you 100%. Just being behind by two amber does not mean that you're necessarily behind in the race per se. Okay, yeah, may have two amber, fine for being pedantic, you're behind the race. But your position in the game overall is a factor of so much more than just the amber count. I mean, I've been in games as well where I'm up by two keys and felt like I was losing, or I've been down by two keys and
Mm,
still felt like I was in a great position. So I don't know. This is even just a little bit tricky to quantify, but
yeah.
I would say you need to have an awareness of where your opponent's trying to get to, where you're trying to get to, and how the game's unfolding. But I don't know. Maybe we can try to put a bow on sort of a definition for when you're ahead or behind even.
And the other thing too is that um, key cheats also influence quite a lot as to whether you're behind or ahead. Like especially more nowadays than ever with the cards like with the card combo of Winds of Death and Key Abduction.
Hmm.
You can be on zero keys and zero amber and still be in the lead because you have the entire combo ready in your archives. And so there's some, I guess, some cards that definitely influence those sort of things, or cards that can just slow the game down. Heart of the Forest, for example, or Dark Heart of the Forest, which play on totally different wavelengths of the game. And so I guess you can judge it game by game. But I think uh, what we should, at least what I think we should do, is if we exclude those niche cases, we should probably come up with a definition of, in terms of just in general, like, is there a certain level of amber? Is there a certain number of keys?
Hmm.
I think for a starting point, if someone's a key ahead and you're not ready to forge a key, I would say you're behind.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. There's like two levels of being behind, right? There's being behind where now I can start counting turns before player wins. Like I can see that you're going to win in two turns. From where I'm at, I can only win in three turns, and I have to figure out now how I can slow you down. There's that point where we're sort of approaching or in the end game, and all of a sudden I can see how much of the road or how much of the race is in front of you and how much is in front of me, distance to finish line, and can kind of gauge whether or not I'm ahead or behind based on yeah how close either of us is to winning. And then earlier before that, right, the game is still unfolding. Neither of us is within kind of a measurable distance of the finish line. Then we have to start talking about like who's got a material advantage that's large enough to say like unless this is dealt with, yeah, I'm going to convert this into a victory. Um, uh, I think I think it's really tough to just say like yes, one key or not. But I think as sort of in broad strokes, I think that's pretty fair. You can say that I've started to make progress and you haven't. It's going to be super matchup dependent, though, like you were saying. It all depends. If we're making broad strokes, though, I think it's fair. Super matchup dependent on whether or not that's like a meaningful amount that you're behind yet. Yeah.
Well, let's use one of your like, I guess, famous. Like, if you realize, yeah, I one of your famous. Sorry, I was just reading someone in the chat about they disagreed with something. So we'll come back to that in a second. But your famous reference of another game is Mario Kart, and it's like in terms of they may be a lap ahead, but because you are at a certain position, you get access to way better items like the bullet bill or the golden mushroom, and those things actually help you get into uh, the lead. And so you might have those decks that have those sorts of cards that help you get back into it. So really, you may not be behind in terms of, as you said, a key or two keys or a couple or some amber, but there is a certain number of, I guess, turns away from winning. And if your opponent is two turns away from winning and you are three turns away from winning, then you are behind in that way, regardless of the number of keys or the number of amber.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking of a couple decks that I enjoy a lot. One of them, Destratage, is one that I had committed a long time ago to making 100 games with, and then coming back with some notes. I think I'm in like the 80s at this point, still plugging along more slowly though, and that's one that tries to like just tempt you off check a bunch of turns in a row. Man, there was a fun name that somebody had for this sort of deck, but I forget what it was called. Maybe Heist. I forget. But anyway, it'll do a couple steals, throw down a Bruno. Eventually, it'll play a Drumble, and then do a big TMTP when you finally there. And so it's more than just an amber count, but the deck comes with those features built in where it can kind of pull behind if you're just measuring in raw amber and then slingshot itself forward. And yeah, this is a deck where you are almost intentionally putting yourself in a position where you are behind, measured by amber, and then banking on some of those swings to catapult you ahead. Yeah.
Mm. So I think there's no way to really numerically determine ahead and behind because every matchup is going to be different. Like if someone has a board based deck and they have five creatures, they may look like they're ahead, but then you just play a board wipe the next turn and they reset.
Hmm.
So there is definitely situation by situation depending on what you face. And so I think I think what we should focus on looking at today is the perceived position in the game of
Hmm.
whether you think you are behind, and then how does your mentality then help you make decisions to uh, come from that deficit to then winning the game. And so, what kind of decisions you need to make, what kind of uh, cards you may need to hold or discard or move on, or
Yeah.
and looking at that in terms of the different game states behind, even ahead, and then figuring out what's the best, what do we do, I guess, and how can we then help others to see at least some of the things that we do. Because I noticed that in some games that people lose morale when they're behind, and they just don't want to put in the effort to get back into the game, and they can see the game early. But sometimes if you play out those games, you often realize that there was actually a way to win. There was a chance. Um, I think that that chance of winning definitely minimizes the longer the game goes on, the closer the opponent is to the end of the game.
Hmm.
But there are definitely ways uh, to not let that perceived behindness hurt your game. Because I know for me, at least, I actually play better when I'm behind than when I'm in the head. Because I feel like I make slower, more calculated decisions. Because I want to, I guess, solve this puzzle that allows me to get back into the game.
Totally. I definitely prefer being an underdog in a matchup. I prefer the mental state of feeling like it's almost like you're like, yeah, I'm behind right now. Pressure's off a little bit, and now I can puzzle this out without feeling like I'm on the hook to close out a game that I should win. I'm reminded of a couple kind of sayings from chess, or at least one. Let's see if the other one comes back to me. One of them is that the hardest game to win is a one game, right? So when you
Mm,
look at a position, and you say, "Gosh, I'm up 3 points of material. I'm quote unquote winning," right? But your opponent in that situation has their back to the wall, suddenly starts playing like a grandmaster, and they're fighting for their life. Yes, from a quote unquote losing position, but you have a very tough opponent who's laser focused on eking out every piece of advantage they can. And sometimes those are, the kind of disparity in mental states at that point can translate into, yes, one person playing much better than the other and maybe overcoming a losing disadvantage from the game. And you see that like a lot in chess, to the point where, yeah, that is a saying that you hear people, reiterate a lot. So that definitely resonates with me, and I definitely prefer to, at least mentally, right? Like no one, at the end of the game, I want to be the one who wins, but early on, I like to be the one who says like, yeah, I'm behind, and I have to, fight my way out of it. It just kind of feels more comfortable for me mentally.
mm.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting. Um, and I know for me, there's some, like, even some decks that I know were play specifically as if they're perceived to being behind um, to the opponent. And maybe that's a mental game that forces my opponent to try to make specific decisions to
Mm.
make them to see if they can make a mistake. I know that no one can play a perfect game of Keyforge. I mean, there are perfect games in terms of a matchup, but there are different decisions that you have to make because you have to make it based on some unknown information on what the cards you're going to draw. And so you can't make the perfect decision with perfect information because there is no perfect information. But I do think that you can, uh, while being perceived behind, uh, play your resources more slowly or more carefully. Not slowly, more carefully, so that you don't let them keep eking out that incremental advantage that they already have. Because any more incremental advantage is just going to lead them closer to those limited number of turns to winning. And you have to make sure to, I guess, play the best to that way. And for me, one of the suggestions or um, some clues onto how to do this well is to spend a bit more time while behind, just looking over a deck list, looking over both decks. Don't rush your turns. Don't believe that you know your deck's perfect plan because you've played it 1,000 times and go, I always do this. I always do this. Because if we get stuck into the habits of trying to play the deck the same way that we always do, then we're not thinking about what the matchup, and we're just going, oh yeah, well, oh well, my deck didn't do it this time. It was the luck of the draw. But I know I've made some really crazy decisions while being behind that my opponent was like, why the heck did you do that? Actually, in a game yesterday, I did play some couple of random TCO games, and I noticed that my opponent wanted to go for a too much to protect play, and they had a bunch of captured amber on their side of the board, and I realized that I think they had a key cheat in shadows. Anyway, I realized that I didn't want them to kill their own cards and make me go up to a certain number and then too much to protect. So instead, I played Body Snatcher and then blew up the board. So I took their creatures with the amber on it, and they couldn't kill them on my side because they needed to sacrifice some things. So they couldn't kill enough to get them to key cheat, which is such a weird line for them for me to take. But
Mm-hmm.
I took it knowing that it was my incremental advantage to winning the game.
Mm, I like that. Yeah, I like the, let's call it outside the box thinking or avoiding tunnel vision. It's so easy to get into these like fall into familiar patterns, and maybe that's, I'm not going to say more detrimental when you're behind than when you're ahead. Well, we'll get there with being ahead. I don't want to get
Mm.
ahead of myself. Um, But I do think that one of the reasons why playing from behind is enjoyable for me is right because it can be correct to take risks or to go for more obscure lines when those are your only realistic outs, right? So you'll hear folks say play to your outs. Well, sometimes that means going for a long shot because going for the thing that your deck does, the high percentage thing that your deck does isn't good enough. And you can recognize when the like, hey, the normal thing that I'm going to do pretty well just isn't going to get there. I have to actually try to push for one of the lower percentage lines. And maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. But the maybe it hits is just more value than definitely not hitting with the thing that's pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, that just reminded me of a, f- a few years ago in is it KFPL? I think it's called the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
One of my teammates, who happened to be in the same bracket as me, but didn't it wasn't facing me, but he realized that his only out to winning the game was to use both the wild wormholes to try to get Chota Hazard to win the game.
Nice.
And he's like, "Watch this! I'll do it every time." And then he did it, and he won the game. And I'm just like, "You are a filthy man!" And what is this decision that you made? It's like it's such a funny way to play. But yeah, you have to take risks when you're behind because he probably could have taken. He did have an out to take them off check in another house, but he's like, "No, this is how I'm going to win this game."
Yep.
And there was enough cards in the deck that he shouldn't have done that, but it was he said it was the way to win, so I guess making that decision while behind, you got to make some risks. And I feel like that's definitely a thing in a lot of games from behind to win is what risks are you going to take, and then I feel like the opposite happens. Well, less opposite, but I feel like when you're ahead, people don't take enough risks, perhaps, or
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting. I definitely see people, myself included, have at times. Although I don't, I like to think I haven't done this recently. But you'll take a turn where you can you take your opponent off check, survive another turn, and basically you buy yourself a turn with no possibility of winning, rather than taking a long shot gamble that might win but will certainly lose if it doesn't hit on that long shot. And I think there's just this psychological thing where like I can guarantee myself to take them off, check this turn, I got to do it. And I don't know. Yeah, it's really hard to break yourself break yourself from those
Mm.
habits. One of the decks too that comes to mind for me, favorite of the show, right? Rector Topor Bigos
Mm.
is a deck that features very very little amber control, and I think you feel the necessity of managing your outs when you can't really halt your opponent's progress so much, right? So Rector and also another favorite of mine, Lorian Il Puro Ministro dell'Olio, both decks with less than 2 on the Amber Control score, get themselves infrequently into situations where I need to forge a key and then key cheat on that same turn in order to win this game because my opponent's marching towards their key 3 and I'm just not going to be able to stop them. And so you put yourself through these contortions to line up a key charge or a might makes right. And the turns that you do to set that up might not always be the most efficient, but there's kind of no other path that's short enough to get you over the finish line before your opponent's going to make their third key. Yeah.
Mm. So from the sounds, it comes down to resource management, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at what resources your opponent has, you look at what resources you have, and then you need to make a calculated, it doesn't have to be calculated, but a calculated decision to for each of your lines. Like
Yeah.
some cards might be really important. Like in Rector, I know that Coward Zen can win Rector games because it allows for the Ganganort to happen. But if you realize that you don't have the Ganganort and the chains are just going to hurt, maybe you have to discard it this time and just go for a different line because you can't necessarily follow the same paths that you normally take. Um, and so, yeah, I think Rector's really interesting because of its versatility in playing in those kind of three spots because it's just got different ways to play. I guess always aggressively, not necessarily always risky, but yeah, it's quite a cool deck.
Hmm. I guess my kind of last thought on playing behind, and maybe we'll revisit it as we talk about some of the other phases too, is I like to, especially when it's a daunting ask to pull out a win from a bad position, especially in situations like that. I try to visualize what the board or the game state looks like after I have won from this position. And if you kind of work through this exercise and force yourself to do it a couple of different ways, at least you'll find find yourself saying things like, "Oh gosh, after I've won, this card is in the discard pile. This card is one that I've just played." Those sorts of things, and you can figure out whether or not, yeah, I can discard this Coward's End, or no, I have to hold it, or this key charge is critical if I'm going to be able to pull out a win, and figure out if that can be a discard for efficiency, or if it's a must hold for a walk off victory. Yeah.
Mm. So on that, are there some cards that you specifically think of when uh, you realize that they are quite valuable from while being behind more so than being ahead?
Mm. The first thing that comes to mind is key cheats. I used to say for a long time with some of the sloppy folks that you shouldn't underestimate a janky AOA deck with that can make Amber and has a key cheat, because it can steal games from pretty much anything. Uh, very true to varying degrees for varying decks, but I think that largely it's true. Like if you have the ability to reach across the finish line and snag that key three without passing the turn, uh, then you have a lot of flexibility even when playing behind. So that's kind of
Mm.
the big one that comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about cards that discard cards from your opponent's hand
Ah,
because
interesting.
you know that the odds will favor you and you will discard the most important cards right
it's
when it matters. Oh,
it's true
look, they're
though.
gonna
Yeah.
key cheat next turn. Now watch this. I'll mind fire that key cheat.
It's so funny you say that. We were just coming off a couple weeks ago playing in the ABR League a Key of Darkness format, which required you
Ugh.
to make one of your make one of your three keys with Key of Darkness, right? And I just like I felt like I watched so many games where it's coming down to like the critical moment, and someone's like, "All right, mind barb," and everybody's like, "Oh," and it's like the Key of Darkness every time. You're just like, "Gosh dang it."
Oh, so good.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes you were like, yeah, my out is this mind barb, or this subtle chain, or this Merkin's hitting just right, and yeah, one of six is not great. One in six is not great odds, but my one in six is still my best chance to like
Hmm.
pull out a win from here. Yeah.
Do you think, and lastly before we move on to even, is there how important do you think handcrafting comes into when you're playing from behind? Do you think it is something to focus on more, or is it a something that you might need to just do it case by case?
Oh, that's a great question. I need to think on that a sec. Do you have an answer off the top of your head?
Um, I think it depends on how far ahead they are. I or as a habit will naturally go towards handcrafting,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and sometimes even go, look, my opponent's about to forge. I can take them off check, but I'm actually going to handcraft here because even if they're two keys ahead, or they're a key and a bit ahead, and they forging that second key ahead, that I think I would rather set myself up so that knowing that I'm not going to be screwed over by clumping in later turns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is such a good question, such a good consideration, and I think it for me it's going to depend a lot on the you know how I'm behind. If I feel like my opponent is handcrafting and building for a big turn, I don't know. I may feel really tempted to kind of match them, but then without deploying more resources, it's like how do I catch up on board? If you're behind both on board and if you feel like your opponent is has a big kind of turn to unload once you finally dealt with their board, gosh, that's a
Mm,
really tough position to be in. And sometimes I look at that situation and say, yeah, my opponent's ahead on board. If I don't deal with this, they're just going to ride out to victory. They've also set up a killer hand for when I do manage this board. I may feel like I have to roll the dice and deploy a whole bunch of resources to deal with the board and hope that I just don't clump after that. But I don't know. I don't know if that's right, but that's what my gut says. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's definitely more of a case by case, but I still have it towards handcrafting, and then sometimes get screwed over by like, oh, I've played the same house 3 turns in a row. Surely I'm not going to draw that house again. And then I draw that house again.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm already behind. Why are you screwing with me? Let me just have these draws. If I just draw more of this house, I'm gonna be like so much better in this game. But no, it didn't do it today.
Yeah, coming from the chat, whatever you do, don't give up. Don't give up. There's
Yeah.
one move you can make to guarantee that you lose, and that's concede. Yeah. Uh, Interesting. I don't know. I guess, I mean, on handcrafting though, if you do get to a point where you've done it successfully and you do it very well, right? You Astron, I mean, not you listener, though you listener may also. I don't know. You are very likely setting yourself up to have more efficient hands, even if that big wave you deployed gets dealt with by their own hand. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, situational, but I think you can make a good case either way. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Some good stuff there. I'm curious now. Let's talk a little bit about. Well, should we talk about playing from behind or playing from ahead? Playing even or head next? I asked because maybe this isn't the case, but I was gonna say that how you play when the game is even maybe incorporates some elements of both, but maybe that's not what you're thinking.
I think you're correct. I think a lot of the same sort of habits do happen with even versus ahead, but maybe I think back to that handcrafting question might influence one or the other, at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you? I think I'm happy with talking about either
All right.
first.
Let's jump to how you play when you're ahead, and maybe in
Mm.
contrast with playing behind too. Um, Oh gosh, one of the things that one of the notes I wanted to put out there, I forgot to brought up first was uh, when to complicate the game and when to simplify the game, right?
Yes.
And I do think that when you're behind, right, this is a time to add, throw more stuff onto the pile of complications, right? Like play the gambling den, play the like I don't know the cards that are going to add more chaos and randomness because it can only favor you if you're behind. At least that's the idea. And on the flip side, right, when you're ahead, the idea is to simplify the game state. So the the analogy to the chess world, right, is yes, I'm ahead on material. Let's just trade off pieces. Anytime I can make an even
Mm.
trade from a position of being ahead, I'm just going to realize that advantage more significantly as pieces get traded off, and there are fewer options or fewer potentials, less potential for surprises. Yeah, let's say.
Mm.
So kind of mitigate the potential for a surprise, and also just uh, as a kind of like uh, a percentage of material on board, my advantages felt more strongly as I trade some things
Mm.
off, and I think you can kind of make that same analogy to the Keyforge world.
And I know we shouldn't keep talking about behind, but one last thing. Do
Yeah.
you? I know there are some decks that are happy to play from behind, but also some that even almost always play from behind because they're more about a longer game setup. Do you think that um, those sort of decks are a good strategy to bring to something like adaptive?
mm, that's good. That's a good question too. Oh, that's a really good question.
Or does
I
that
don't.
assume too much of your opponent's skill and is asking for you to assume that you're better than your opponent?
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know if I would say it's asking you to assume you're better than your opponent. I think it may favor you even more so in that case. I will say I like having decks that will draw out the game a little bit and give you more more time for kind of skill expression. Though I know a lot of folks who have been very successful with very fast rushy decks in adaptive setting too. But if we're talking about decks that are a little bit more controlling, maybe like to be a little bit more reactive, uh, I think that those decks generally come with more rope to hang yourself on, and you could
Mm,
make the case that whether or not you are more skilled, being less experienced with that deck specifically puts you at a greater disadvantage in a setting like that. I think you can make the
yeah,
case. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's interesting because like I know that there are decks, at least that I own, that have a if it can get to the end state of this rule of six thing it can do, and that it can win from regardless of how far behind, but it is like a 5 or 4 or 5 card combo. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like how you're kind of asking your opponent to work on your clock, and is that too much? Yeah, I think that's interesting.
I have. Oh gosh, I am. The reprehensibly unflappable cane. Cane is the deck. Yeah, I got it right. I wasn't sure if it was the or just another one, but this is a deck that I've enjoyed a lot for adaptive. I'll put a link in the chat in the show notes here. Um, that kind of falls into the category that you were mentioning. It can play uh, like a fair. Let me just play out some creatures, make some pips, and hope to kind of reap and do normal Keyforge things and win a game that way. It can also self purge and use its archive as kind of a secondary purge spot and get itself to a point where it's kind of rule of sixing and always has a
Mm.
universal key lockout and keeps hitting you with cutthroat researches and is preventing forges and whatnot with Tautau
Yeah.
vapors looping over and over. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, so a lot of fun. I think I found it among the bulk of my collection after getting smashed by Jacques at one point and being like, I bet I've got a double Tau Tau Vapors Eddie cutthroat research deck somewhere, and like yeah, sure enough. So it's definitely not on the same level as Jacques, but it does a thing that's reminiscent of what Jacques can do, and uh, being a lesser deck maybe makes it even more fit for adaptive perhaps, but
Yeah.
uh, I enjoy seeing how folks take this deck so many different ways, and part of that is yeah, when you're playing from behind you have options. Gosh, do I should I flood the board with Star Alliance creatures, or should I try and keep pushing on some of the more controlling elements? And that's a tough decision point, and I think you're yeah disadvantaged not having as much experience with the deck. So I could see it.
Mm.
All right, you
Awesome.
yeah
I like it.
got me rambling about reprehensibly unflappable cane. I love self purge decks. I don't know.
I used to love them. I feel like the time walk is less walky and more crawling these days.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, they they still get some play. It was a fun. Gosh, did I put this in? We another ABR format we just did. Tridaptive was kind of fun.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of fun. Anyway, I digress. But cool. Let's talk about playing when you're ahead. Let's talk about playing when you're
Yeah.
ahead. Um, Flip side. So we mentioned that when you're playing from behind, maybe you should be looking for ways to complicate the game state. Give yourselves more options for creating some chaos and making some chances for yourself. And then versus playing from ahead, yeah, maybe you're not looking to allow your opponent to build a big archives or handcraft or build a big board, and you just want to keep things simple. Board state small. At least that's what
Mm.
my head goes to for initial things on that front. Yeah.
For me, I think the most mistakes a player can make happens while they're ahead. I feel like many players tend to not value their resources and not evaluate the game state well enough to which will then lead to them making a mistake and allowing the opponent back in the game. And I feel like once the tempo swings to your opponent and they're back in the game, it's so much harder to then
Hmm.
win. some things that I often see people do is that while they are ahead, they tend to throw away board wipes. Like, oh, I have the
Mm.
board, I have the amber, I have the keys. My opponent doesn't have anything. And then they go in, like, blow up your board, bring out Arise, bring out a bunch of creatures, and pretty much Restoring Guntus you out of a house that you're wanting, and then now you're not in the right. The tempo's in their hands. It's the game's in their control, and then they can just reap and reap and reap, and you're like, well, I have no way to kill these cards because I threw away my board wipe.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's sometimes hard to like imagine how your opponent gets back into the game and then what the board looks like, what the game looks like when they do. And yeah, I agree with you. That's interesting. Folks pitching board wipes and board control tools when they're actually ahead.
Mm.
Nice note from the chat here too. Riku's saying that they enjoy playing from behind or playing from ahead can be very interesting, uh, and that they encourage folks to take advantage of their board when they're winning. Interesting. Is that
I agree.
you
I
agree with that?
totally
Yeah.
agree.
So
Yeah.
this is something that I struggle with, and I feel like this is probably a universal like KeyForge experience, right? Like you've got let's harken back to the BDQ days, right? You're up on Delta, right? Uh, and you're like, I should just reap out. I should just reap for 5 or whatever and not add to the board. I've got a mixed hand, but whatever. I should just reap out and then take advantage of this board while I've got it. Meanwhile, your opponent is kind of building up their position. Maybe they're not quite matching you, but they're handcrafting. They're doing whatever to kind of advance their own game. Do you feel like this pressure of like it just you feel like you're not progressing if you don't move anything from your hand? That's the trap, right? Yeah.
I think it's because a lot we've been teaching for years. I think two things: handcrafting, always be checking. And I actually think I disagree with doing those all the time. I
Mm.
I think that people look at their hand and they're like, okay, I need to play as many cards and use as many cards as I can. Whereas they should have just used their creatures on board, even if it's just 3 or 4 creatures, because that incremental advantage is going to be just as important as them getting new cards or them wasting important cards in hand just to get through to further develop their handcrafting. And so, along with that, people like I've seen so many games where people have like even just like 6 creatures of one house, and then they go to play another house
Mm-hmm.
and bring out 6 more creatures or something like that. And I'm like, why would you play out these creatures? Because you now just given me my board wipe enormous levels of value compared to what I had from just clearing out one house, and that can just I think people they know that these things are good and they keep doing the good things, but there are some times that they need to realize when these actions of handcrafting isn't actually good, where these moments of handcrafting are actually detrimental to them winning the game. And I think along the same lines of always be checking or ABC, people go, if I just check now, I'm just making sure that they don't have amber control to take me off check, and then I can win. And how many times, I don't know if you've experienced this, JT. I know for myself where I've been in a situation where I'm like, okay, I'll just check, just get the check, and then they take me off check, and then I get the check, then they take me off check, and they keep doing it, and then at the same time they're also gaining incremental advantage, and then I
Mm.
realize I'm about to lose. Like, what was the point of me going and checking every turn if I had left some threats on the board that were going to become a problem later? And it's like, now I'm trying to. It's what are those rules in chess? The 4 things I tell you to do before you start your turn,
Before you start your turn. Ooh.
or as you before you have to choose your action. Isn't it like threats something something? There's those.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, looking for checks, hanging pieces, that sort of a thing. Yeah, I don't have the list off the top of my head, but I think I know what you mean. Yeah, look for the
Yeah,
checks you
and I
can
think
make. Yeah.
there should be something for us in Keyforge as well. Like if you're, um, you could get to check, but you left a Witch of the Eye on the board. I always think of Witch of the Eye because it can punish you quite significantly.
Yeah.
Um, But
witches
if
and
you did
checks
choose,
and
if
yeah.
you, yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you waited a second and just killed that witch, even if you didn't get to check, you're still in a better position than you were before.
Yeah, good notes from the chat here too, and I think it's what you're saying. Checking is one form of pressure you can put on your opponent, but it's not the only form, right? And so
Mm,
there will be, no, maybe the majority of the time, yeah, getting a check is the right thing to do. But there are other, maybe, but there are going to be other ways that you can pressure your opponent outside of that. Yeah, deploying a witch comes to mind, or just being aware of your opponent's outs that they're playing towards and whether or not you can close those doors. And if you can close all of your opponent's doors, options for getting to a victory eventually, then whether or not you win this turn or next turn is kind of immaterial, right? Mate in two versus mate in one. Well, if it's a sure thing, then it's a sure thing. And if I can mitigate some of your potential for pulling in a miraculous victory by taking a slightly longer route, then maybe that's worth it. Yeah.
mm. Um, it's part of the reason I actually really love. I like having creatures that aren't threats on the board.
Uh-huh. You get to reap with
Because
them.
you get to read with them because people are like, that's not a threat.
Yeah.
And so they don't kill it. And then I'm like, well, now I get to play this house and I get one extra ember. Oh, I've got two of those creatures now. It's two extra ember. Oh, now I've got three of these creatures, three extra ember. And eventually that pressure is just going to lead the opponent going, crap. I have been focusing on the wrong thing. Um, my favorite way to play too, along that, is like if I'm reacting to opponent, is actually making sure that there is somewhat of an even spread of houses on the opponent's side,
Uh-huh.
but leaning heavily towards what houses have already been played more. So if I realize they're about to play Star Alliance, then I will make sure that there is a less Star Alliance than other creatures on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Pressure my opponent for 2 turns and they're still calm, then I know I'm in trouble. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think there is also, um, I guess, the most comfortable spot to be in is that if you have creatures on the board and then you have answers in your hand to either them, the opponent, uh, taking them off check or clearing some creatures or clearing the board, then why not just take the advantage of those creatures? Because those advantages aren't going to go away from your hand because it's hidden knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting concepts for me in Keyforge. If I'm a longtime Magic player, and you hear people say in MTG, be careful of overextending, of overcommitting. It's a little bit different in Keyforge, right? Because in Magic, you deplete your hand to put resources on the board, whereas in Keyforge, you draw back up. So it feels a little bit more like, yeah, I've got 4 Logos creatures, and then if I play 4 Untamed creatures too, it's not really overcommitting because I'm going to draw those cards right away. But in a sense, it is, right? Because you've have this now excess of potential on the board, and you're not taking advantage of either to their fullest, right? And not only that, but you're kind of negative handcrafting yourself, right? So whereas in the first scenario, a big reap for 4, holding those 4 Untamed creatures, yes, puts, you're not moving through your deck. Sure, you are at the same time not putting out more resources than you can kind of take advantage of, and there will be times when it's right. But I think you're absolutely right. The flip side of what you're trying to say of like, hey, I'm trying to make sure my opponent has this even spread. If you have a lopsided spread and can keep building your hand of one-sided house, then this is a great way to press an advantage when you're ahead. Force your opponent to deal with kind of the advantage that you've got already. Yeah.
And I guess it's like kind of all goes back to what most of the things that we've spoken about together on this podcast is that a lot of it's just about evaluating
Mm.
the game state, evaluating the opponent's deck, evaluating what their ability is to come and to win the game, and then trying to play into that with what your deck's trying to do. Back to empathy. A lot of it goes back to empathy.
Yes, indeed. It's so true though. In order to play effectively when you're ahead or behind, I mean, in any situation really, you need that empathy. It's such an advantage to appreciate and anticipate what your opponent's doing, why they're making the decisions that you're doing. Whether you're trying to find your long shot out to pull it to snatch a victory from behind, or if you're trying to shut the door and close the deal on a game where you are ahead. Yeah, understanding what your opponent's aiming towards, what game state they're trying to navigate towards, so you can kind of manage your resources appropriately. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Uh, Curious too. We've talked kind of about these concepts in the context of Archon, Open Archon, right, where you can see your opponent's list.
Mm.
Do any of these things change much for you in sort of a sealed setting?
I like playing. I like sealed for the fact that you have hidden information,
Mm-hmm.
and so um, I almost, if my deck has a game plan and I know what my game plan is. So, for example, I had the Doctor X Rebel combo at KFC. I was pretty lucky. Um, I also had Island of Misfit Toys and Well of Memory. So I was pretty lucky in both those regards, knowing that I didn't have to preserve my Mars stuff as heavily, and that because I know that I could get them back with Well of Memory or with other ways. And so having hidden information means that I could play from behind, I could play ahead. Actually, I think I played almost every single game behind. And I was okay playing behind because I knew how influential the Doctor X Rebel combo was, especially in a sealed setting, because those sort of things you don't want to play too many creatures into. But people are going to handcraft. They're going to play the best that they can, and so they're going to play creatures. Um, and so you can use, I guess, those sorts of ideas, or even to bluff. I love bluffing in sealed. Like, I've been taking you off check for like 3 or 4 turns, and I haven't played shadows in a little bit. Maybe I have it too much to protect. Maybe I don't. I remember that one of my friend Cloggin, what he did was I think he won like a sealed like prime or something, I
Mm.
believe, because he had two mushroom attacks in his deck. And so he could bait with one and then it put them into a false sense of security and kill them with the other one.
Yep. Yep.
And so yeah, I think hidden information definitely changes a lot because you don't know what resources you have compared to what they have, and how they interact. So that was when deck lists, I guess, were hidden. Are they not hidden anymore? Are they still hidden?
Still hidden. Still hidden.
Still
And
hidden. Good, good, good.
gosh, I had
Okay, they were
the.
hidden. Yeah, don't worry. I was at KFC. I remember. I was just um, yeah, and I think that was really important for you to know, to not necessarily think about what do they have, but what could they have, and not to play too heavily into risks, especially if you're ahead. If you're ahead, um, and you know that there's red line rotation, I think red line rotation scared a lot of people into not being too aggressive in Ember Skies, in that Ember Skies Sealed Alliance. I know it hurt me. My opponent was playing a Skyborn Geistoid with like, I think they had 3 Parabytes, so they kept increasing the key
Oof.
cost and kept taking slow turns going into that. I'm like, damn, I can't kill too much because they have a red line rotation. They didn't have a red line rotation in their deck at all, and they just slowly built this advantage with these small board that eventually they had a big board that could just reap out with it, and there was nothing I could do because I was like, they are signaling they have a red line rotation, and they didn't, and I should have thought about those cards. I shouldn't. I don't know. Sometimes you have to risk it. Sometimes you don't. Depends. If you're behind, got to risk more.
Gotta risk more. I love the different flavors of bluffing that you get in Archon versus Sealed, right? In Archon, you get to bluff because they know what's in your list, and you can play as though it's in your hand, whether or not it is in your hand. And in Sealed, you can play to project that a card is in your list when maybe it isn't. And it has just a little bit of different flavor. And then at the same time, too, some of the kind of concepts of playing from one behind or playing one ahead almost become a little bit more pure, if watered down,
Mm.
in a hidden deck environment, hidden list environment, you kind of are relying a little bit more on the fundamentals of these concepts rather than the particulars of the matchup in a lot of cases, which is interesting, right? You're handcrafting or you're managing your board resources and not overcommitting, but in sort of some general principle senses, as opposed to I know exactly how many board wipes they have and now it's safe for me to like go all out or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That less the lack of knowledge means that you just have to take, I guess, gut choices. Sometimes you have to
Mm.
just make some decisions on your gut and go, look, they have this card. Sometimes I just have to go for it. If they don't have it, they don't have it. If they do, they do. Because if I don't go with this play, I'm probably going to lose anyway.
Yeah. And you had asked about adaptive before. This happens a lot. This happens a lot in matchups with high disparity. You end up with lots of chains, and uh, you'll find yourself in situations where uh, I just have to go for it early until the chains are shed. And if I don't, then I'm just giving my opponent time to get into the game. The chains are
Mm,
buying me time to take these risks now. And so it might be just correct to go to, 12 while you're on a 4 card hand or a 3 card hand and hope that you haven't found that TMTP yet. Because if I don't,
yep.
you're going to get to the 6 card hand territory and I'm surely be able to find it and I'm just going to be in trouble. Um, I feel like, yeah, you come up with these sorts of situations an awful lot when there's high disparity between the decks and lots of chains at play.
Yep.
Yeah,
What is that card in Grim Reminders? The Untamed card. Actually, you know what? I remember it. Rot Feast.
Rot
I
Feast.
was
Yeah,
facing against Rot Feast in Adaptive in Kagi, and my deck needed my creatures to gain Ember, and it definitely didn't. It lost both game one and game two, and there's a higher change between the two decks. And I was like, you know what I need to do? I need to not worry about that card coming, and I just need to put all my creatures on the board, and then just keep using those creatures as much as I can, and try to gain enough advantage that even if they were to get Rot Feast, that I would be too far ahead for that Rot Feast to matter. And it worked out. It worked out really well. I won with the board, and I even had the Star Alliance artifact that gives you one extra amber for every reap you get
yeah,
for Star Alliance creatures, and just able to take as much advantage of that card and my creatures as I could.
nice, nice. This is the double-sided Crystal Hives Uncharted Territories. Is that what it's called? I forget. I think that's what it's called. But for any Star Alliance creature, double-sided one indeed. Is that double-sided? Oh gosh, it might not be on our double-sided list.
For the remainder of the turn, yeah, it is double sided because I have a deck with two Rot Feasts and
Uncharted Lands.
three Soul Bombs.
Oh, nice. One of
So
my
much fun.
one of my namesake DT decks, not DT, sorry, namesake Grim Reminders decks. This is one that spawned in the wild. Wasn't a game found one. Has Rot Feast, but with a Legacy Phoenix Heart to go along
Ah,
with
that's cool. Oh, that's really cool.
Soul Bomb. So yeah, the Phoenix Heart is very fun to make happen with Rot Feast. Yeah, love it.
That's really cool. But yeah, as Riku was saying, you can bluff an Archon, but because the game's much quicker, there's much less turns.
Hmm.
The value is not as high, and that's why I think that these days cards like TMTP um, and better in decks that aren't controlling, but are decks that are quick. So that the decks that are quick because they can
Mm,
get ahead, and then TMTP is better because they have a limit of how quickly they can catch up. Because if they
interesting.
can't just burst to like 10 or 11 because you're already ahead, and that TMTP is too much of a risk. Um, but then again, as we said before, sometimes you have to risk it. Sometimes you have to risk it.
Love it. Cool. All right, so let's shift gears now and talk about the last of the trifecta. When the game's even. We said that yeah, you're kind of considering a blend of the other two. Are there any things in particular that you do differently when you feel like the game's sort of even?
When the game is even, it is the time that I'm spending the most handcrafting for
Okay.
me because Um, if I know the game is even, I know that they can gain one incremental advantage now, but I can gain advantage for later by focusing more on um, getting to my the turns flowing. Because that way, if I get myself to a handcraft of 4 or 5 cards, then I know that I can play 4 or 5 cards the following turn, and I think that's the best time for me to handcrafts because you are not necessarily risking too much by them being ahead, by them starting to get ahead, and I do like to do it then because I'm okay. I'm okay. As I said before, I'm okay playing behind. I actually prefer it. I think I can make my opponent make mistakes, and I think I can. I mean, that sounds arrogant of me, but I believe that uh, I can make more calculated decisions while being behind. I can
Sure.
evaluate where I am in the game and know what kind of things I want to do to get ahead. Especially if I've got a card like Dark Heart of Forest. I love Dark Heart of the Forest. I think it's a very clever card, and I know you guys talked about that card.
Hmm.
I also even, yeah, I just love being behind. It's one of my, I think it's definitely the spot I am the most comfortable in because it means that every advantage that I gain puts pressure on my opponent and her puts them into a position to try to have to play perfectly without making too many mistakes.
Hmm. Interesting. I was gonna say, yeah, hearing you talk about that, yeah, it sounds like you're very willing
Oh,
to.
Riku.
We'll save that for the stream special. That's for the bottom of the Beaker after dark. Oh, funny. Yeah, it sounds like you're very like willing or almost like eager to give up some ground now for those that advantage you can build on in
Mm.
future turns. Like you're like, yeah, run on ahead. Sure, I'm going to pace myself and build up this advantage, such that I'm playing in more efficient turns and downstream. I like
Oh,
it.
I don't necessarily think that decks that purposely play behind are much important in the meta at the moment,
Mm,
unless those because I don't think there are decks that aren't that may look behind, like the deck called Haze, which came second at Worlds. It may look like it's behind, but it's just setting itself up for its
sure.
infinite Rule of Six combo. But decks that purposely be behind, I don't think they are as important in the meta as they used to be because you're asking your opponent to play on your time, but the decks are becoming so proactive that
Hmm.
you can't play on your own time if you are behind. It's definitely harder in this meta if you are behind, unfortunately. But I don't think that it's too much of a. I don't think it's a skill you should drop. I think you need to use the same skills regardless of where you are in the game. And so, um, yeah, a
Yeah,
little bit of a
I
tangent there.
agree with you on that. Especially as a person, I mean, I enjoy reactive decks, more grindy decks, um, uh, and I've played some matches and folks have said, hey, you're being kind of a jerk playing with your food here. Why don't you just close it out? And it's like, well, there's a difference between uh, taking, squeezing that slow advantage, that guaranteed advantage into a victory versus taking an unnecessary risk to close out a game possibly more quickly. I don't know. Thinking about two decks that I've talked about a bunch before: T Zyger, the Lighthouse Dock, and Sai E Philavaki. Sai in particular is a deck that can feel an awful lot like you're playing with your food when it's doing its thing. With on repeat taking folks off of a double heavy subsidies check with with
Mm.
a Martyr of the Vault on loop. Um, but getting a little bit far afield, I like the note of handcrafting with when the game is even, and I think it comes down to micro doses of how you approach the game when you're both ahead and behind, and being mindful of you know, where your opponent's trying to navigate towards, what you need to do to win, still asking yourself those same questions, though just not necessarily being in a position where there's already somebody kind of firmly in a head or behind position. Yeah.
Mm.
So I think you kind of wear a lot of those same things, though you find a more even balance perhaps on whether or not to complicate the board state. That may
Mm.
depend more on what you're aiming towards, but isn't necessarily as one-sided decision. And same for how risk averse you should be in your decision making. Uh, it's you can certainly say, hey, do I feel like gambling, and that can be fun. Um, but when you're behind, yeah, maybe it's correct more often to gamble, perhaps, and when you're ahead, maybe less so. Although you were saying before, maybe that's not the case. Do you like taking risks ahead when you're ahead? Do you think that's
I think
uh,
sometimes you can definitely. I like risks in some regard, like the calculated risks.
sure?
Cards like Binate Rupture,
Yeah,
where it
yeah, yeah.
just doubles both players' amber. You have to have enough of an advantage for that to matter. I know that I made it was a very complicated decision that cost me an NKFL match where I was on. I don't know. I was just shy of forging my second key, and I decided to go safely and just get to check there and discarded the binate. But had I used the binate there, I would have won the game because of the level. I decreased the number of turns before I was going to win, and it
Mm-hmm.
was enough of a shortcut, I guess, or enough of a turn skip that it was more significant for me than it was for my opponent. And I didn't want to risk it because I was going to give him like 7 extra amber.
Yeah.
So it was a lot, and I couldn't make that risk. But I wish I had.
Yeah, it's a tricky one too, especially if you were giving your opponent a key when they would not have gotten one otherwise, in an
Mm.
NKFL setting specifically, where you're maybe juggling key differential on top of a win loss. But I like the example of binate rupture as a calculated risk. When you're ahead, just seeing it as a thing, like, yeah, this is going to be good for my opponent. There's some risk inherent in that, but at the same time, just chopping off runway at the end of this race is going to benefit me more while being ahead. That could very well be the case. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
No, yeah. Even like as you were, I don't know. There was just some times that I feel like people don't make enough risks in general. I think Riku made a really good point that it's something that is hard to know when to make risks. I think the more experienced players are good at doing so, uh, especially in high tense situations,
Mm-hmm.
like a Vault Tour or a Worlds. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting, and I think that it's something that you guys should definitely talk about again later. Maybe you can get Riku on because he loves it so much. um,
Perhaps we'll see.
but again,
Cool.
it comes back to evaluating the game state and the matchup.
I dig it. I dig it. Well, sweet. Gosh, that was good stuff. I don't know if I had any other notes from my end. Anything you wanted to touch on before we hear a word from our sponsors?
Did we actually say anything about how to throw away a lead?
How to throw away a leak? Goo.
Mm.
Maybe we should. Maybe we should if we
I think
haven't.
we kind of did some speckles in there, like talking about discarding board wipes. But is there other ways you can throw away a lead?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the gosh, not having an awareness of your opponent's outs, and I think there are situations like that are very very similar to uh, what you were talking about with throwing away board wipe, right? So you look at the game, you say, gosh, the only way my opponent's going to win from here is if they wipe the board and then flood immediately after. And if you can recognize that, then yeah, maybe you hold. Oh, quick draw, not even here, and roast me so thoroughly.
I was
Best
about
way
to
to
roast
best
you
way.
too.
Yeah,
I was going
yeah.
to say key cheats with Cease Forge.
Yeah, yeah, trying to play your walk-off key cheat or with C-Forge on the board that you played that turn is also not ideal. Or yeah, miscounting as you're counting to 12 for Obsidian Forge is, one way to throw away a good lead. Um, yeah, I'm very capable of doing either of those. How else? I think hmm. Trying to think of other good examples. This is definitely one that I'm I'm guilty of from time to time. I should have more good examples. You have any good examples off the top of your head?
Personally, for me, when I'm ahead, I tend to play my cards more quickly.
Okay.
And so I look at my turn, I'm like, yep, that's how I should play my turn. And then go bang, 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 bang. And then don't think about the whole uh, problem, if there is a problem, or don't think about the things in becoming clumsy in that. And so um, I probably do it more online than I do in person. In person, I'm a bit more patient. I don't know why, but online, I just go like, yes, I can do this, this, and this. Especially when I'm streaming, actually, I can because I like to talk it out loud. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm gonna do, bang, 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 and then I'll go, hey, let's do it, and then I risk it and I rush it.
Yeah, especially playing online. There are lots of habits that could fall into this. I mean, if we're talking sort of not just how you play, but also how you're kind of managing yourself, meta managing yourself, if you will. It's easy to like, oh, my opponent's taking a while, and I feel like I've already won. Let me check another tab and see what's going on. I don't know, on the in the old email front or something, and then you pull yourself out. Uh, yeah, yeah. There's definitely things along that front. And this gets back to the kind of notion behind the hardest game to win being a one game. It can be very difficult to maintain the level of mental focus and acuity that you had when you were losing once you're
Mm.
ahead, because you relax, you mentally relax a little bit, and maybe you're not as sharp. Maybe you see a line that seems pretty good and you go, oh, that's good enough. I don't have to look for oh, that was the other thing I wanted, the other chess adage I was reaching for. Once you find a good move, the saying is, once you find a good move, look for the better move, right? And it's
Mm.
very easy when you're ahead to see what looks like a good move and then not look for the better move. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also experience in being in those scenarios, especially at like a top table. If you're in a top table and you haven't been there before, you're gonna make
Mm,
mistakes. You just
sure.
will. You don't have that experience to hold those nerves in, and it's stressful. Regardless of whether you think you have a strong mental fortitude. It's why in the NBA, some teams that have won the finals before, even if they're like the fourth or the fifth seed in the East or the West, like they still have better odds of winning the finals than someone who's the second seed who's showing promise and but a younger team. Like this year in the NBA, there's a team called the Rockets, and they're quite young. Um, and they're currently like second or third in the West, but people like are still evaluating teams that are fifth and sixth above them because they've been to the finals before. They've been in at that stage. The stresses and anxieties and decision making is they've gone through that. They've gone through the that stress, and now so yeah, experience at that top table is definitely going to change it a lot. Um, yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Going along with that too is sort of frustration, and as our friend in the chat, Clogan, likes to say, tilt as a mechanic. Like it's also easy to get frustrated with yourself when you feel like you're ahead and you've made a mistake, and then rather than regroup and say, yeah, what do I do next though, just to let that mistake compound. Uh, as a I played a lot of baseball growing up, burnt out on baseball, but played a lot of baseball, and had one of my coaches used to always uh, say, I don't care if you make an execution error, but it's the mental errors that are going to get you to like run laps, you know? So if you make a mistake, that's fine, but like pick your head up and don't make the next mistake. Just focus on keeping your like mental toughness up. And I don't know. I think if I have a superpower in the Keyforge world, it's not in like making the right decisions, but it's in like not beating myself up when I do make mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, when I lost, when I lost to uh, Flaming Hobo, in at KFC
Hmm.
because it was the rematch of a day one where I had beaten him in day one, and then I knew I could beat him again. Um, but I didn't end up winning because some things just didn't fall right with my deck. I had some terrible clumping. Doesn't matter. I came away from that table, smile from ear to ear. I don't know why. I've never I should have been so frustrated with myself. I'm like, man, if I just had this card, I could be it could be the finals, could be the finals of worlds. But I went from smile from ear to ear. And my friends were like, "Did you win?" And I was like, "No, no, I didn't." It's like, so why are you smiling so much? Because I got top four, and I didn't expect myself to get there, and I'm just ecstatic that I got there. And so instead of beating myself up over the losing, like because I feel like I didn't make any mistakes, and so and even if I did make a mistake, whatever, I lost, and that happens. I can't win everything. Well, no one can win everything unless you are Bamboo playing Knee, the deck called Knee, and you're Bamboo. You will win everything.
Yes.
But yeah, mental fortitude is really, really interesting, and just realizing that you're playing a beautiful game called Keyforge, and that it's just a lot of fun. And sometimes randomness happens. Sometimes you make mistakes. Just get back there next time.
I know why you were really smiling. Didn't have to deal with all those Australian spiders for like a week. It puts you on cloud nine.
Uh,
Oh gosh. Oh, didn't mean to cheapen your. That was good. I didn't cheapen it with a bad joke.
and
But
maybe I was smiling because I didn't have to go and sit behind the camera for the final table because I hadn't been on camera once, and I was like, okay, good. Still didn't get camera. Still didn't get the camera. Don't have to get people to watch how sloppy I am with all my decision making.
uh, I like it. I like it, my man. Okay, cool. Well then, uh, with that having been said, before I turn into a horrible ball of stereotypes, maybe we'll hear a word from our esteemed sponsor for the evening. This episode of Bot on the Beaker was brought to you by Coward Send, the courier service for life's most awkward messages. Whether it's a delicate breakup note or an overdue apology, or that oops, I forgot your birthday card, Coward Send delivers with professionalism and poise so you don't have to. Need to keep things secret? Well, for a small additional fee, we'll even deliver anonymously. With Coward Send, you can dodge the drama while still doing the right thing. Because sometimes bravery is knowing when to let someone else handle it. Yes, indeed. Coward Send. You ever feel like you could use the Coward Send services, Astron?
I mean, the postal service in Australia, yes.
Right on, right on. Folks, I want to let you also know, too, that you can join us for Bottom of the Beaker live on Wednesday evenings at 9:30 Eastern Time, right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. You can find recordings of our past shows and other streams over at youtube.com. We are at Sloppy Labwork over there. And for the very best content, 34? No, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. Search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice. And we'll be there, whether it's coming from behind or ahead. Either way, we'll be there. All that and more at sloppylabwork.com. And thanks so much, Astron, for joining us this evening. And would you be so kind as to give us the send-off?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on the Sloppy Lab Work podcast. I look forward to coming again maybe in a few weeks.
Excellent. Excellent. And stay sloppy, folks. Indeed. All right. Oh, yeah. Chestnut, let me get away from that. Nom, nom, nom. Very good.
Oh my goodness. Yep. Thanks, Riku.
It was all downhill from minute one.
He
Awesome.
started the episode with a behind joke, and I let myself back into it.
We we knew it was coming, so just gotta lean into it. Just gotta lean into it. All right. Well, sir, this was a lot of fun. I Do you have time for a game? Filling up for a game this evening or
I
this
think
morning?
so.
I should say
I can
this
play one game. It's afternoon now. It's 3
early
p.m.
afternoon. Yeah. Okay.
See, because I do have to take my wife. Um, Let me just check which one I need
Hmm.
to take her, because I need to take her to her parents' place because she's going early to the convention.
No worries.
We didn't end the episode. We just make the most of it. Well, I like to be behind, guys. That's why you hear it here. You heard it here. Okay, so she can go in an hour, so I got time.
Okay. Cool.
Is there
Well,
anything in particular you wanted to play?
hmm. Well, we've been doing adaptive best of one games, but we can mix it up. Got anything that the topic du jour kind of sparked for you, deck wise?
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I mean, yeah, but that deck's like 5 spicy peppers.
I'll play like a 4.5. That's cool.
Ah, maybe the deck is the Dark Heart of Forest one that I was,
Ah.
which is not fun for either player to play. Um,
I've been known to enjoy even Darker Heart, the regular one, from time to time. So don't hold back on my account. Of course,
I
if
could
you
play
have
the
to,
winner of my 80 Sanscap solo tournament.
okay, 80 Sascap
I don't know how
solo.
spicy that is.
Let's see.
Um,
I will pick an
it
80
wasn't all my
Sascap
80 Sas
champion.
decks. It wasn't all my 80 Sas decks. It actually got bumped up to an 81. So I'm cheating a little bit. It's
Let's
a Never
see.
Skies deck. I can link it to you right now if you want to show it or not.
Oh, I have some fun options. Oh wait, 81. I'm already trying to cheat. Not 81. 80 here.
I have an 81. It's okay. Mine's 81.
Oh, this is a filtering by present day SAS, but showing me future SAS numbers. Interesting.
Yeah, maybe that's what mine's doing. I don't know.
Okay, then I'm gonna go for max cheating Amber Skies deck. That's coming in 83 on
That's fine. I'm playing a Never
83.
Skies as well. Put mine in the chat. It's a
Oh,
Vietnamese deck.
nice. All right, making a new game for us in beginner. Password is sloppy and
Oh, because it's Vietnamese, I don't know how to search it properly. And
yeah, that's the trick. Another semi namesake uh, deck, the Justice that battles victim, came from Holly Stewie. Pretty cool. Okay, let's see what we got.
okay, yeah, interesting.
Triple
I'm actually
Skippy.
just really enjoying Ever Skies this last couple of
I've been
weeks.
I've been really enjoying Amber Skies. I have to say, yeah. Double against our flags. Red line rotation. Nice, nice. Double in here somewhere too. Cool.
It's
Triple
got
Skippy.
some nice stuff with some boring stuff.
Hmm. 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 Oofa doofa.
Let's see.
All right, pitching that return to rubble now. We'll see if we regret it. In here somewhere to
Ooh,
mill and then shuffle back in here somewhere. Cool.
interesting.
Um,
Hmm. Oh, the Soul Snatcher.
fetch. I don't know. Yeah, Soul Snatcher's fun. Keep trying to make fetch work. Let's see. This
Fetch?
this
What does
deck has.
Fetch do?
I don't know. I don't know. It was mentioned in the chat, but I missed it. Um, this is an interesting. This deck has an interesting Kernel Slime with a capture pip, and I am I have always so tempted to play it because of the capture pip, and I always regret not having discarded it. Let me think about this moment
Man, ever
though.
since Knee's deck, Riku's deck Knee,
Yeah,
I highly value Return to Rubble as a card.
yeah, it's great. Uh, or it is quite an enabler too, especially if you are mindful with how you stack your discard. Though Need maybe doesn't have to worry quite as much once it gets going. But yeah, I will. I'm very much hoping to be getting that card back.
Mm,
Play this Geistoid Enhanced Worm Tunnel. Very nice. I think we don't want to see any more of that summoned council doing shenanigans.
yeah, that's fair. Oh, but now you have your own.
And I have my own. Maybe I'll get that Return to Rubble back in the mix. We'll see.
I doubt it.
Unlikely. Unlikely. Cool.
You don't have as many creatures as I was hoping.
I don't.
We both seem to have backup plans. I am high on that card right now.
I like it.
I was really high on it with
I'm gonna play this card.
what's the
See
set
if I
with
regret it.
DT. Ooh, Wolfgar.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's see.
draw a card. We'll archive a card. We'll shuffle,
Hot dang.
and then we'll just play.
Playing the Brillix too.
Mm-hmm.
Logos. Yeah, we're gonna take the archives just to be able to pitch something here. Okay.
Nice. Oof. Takes it. Ooh, nice.
Okay. Fun.
Let's go Logos. Let's just draw another card.
Keep drawing. Yep.
Let's archive another card.
Yeah. Not
Let's.
tempted to scrap. Oh, maybe you have many skippies. Not tempted to scrap the skippy.
Not yet. No, no, no.
I like it.
Archive another card, and then we'll steal two.
Oofa doofa. Going Geistoid here. No on those archives. Get ourselves haunted. Archive a thing.
In here somewhere.
Two cards going here. Let's.
Oh, is it a Logos in here somewhere?
Yeah.
Wait. No,
Uh,
you're in Geistoid.
I'm
You're
a
in Geistoid.
Geistoid.
Sorry. I just saw you use the Quantum first and was like, what the heck is happening? Worm Tunnel and Crepuscular Race. I didn't check if your deck has a Veil. It does not. Life is okay. Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, at this point, I would consider Astron ahead a little bit. I think you are likely favored overall, and I'm not keeping pace, so I don't feel great about that.
See, this is why I like cards like Red Line
It's close,
Rotation.
close to even.
Let's
Backup
do
plan.
one damage to that guy. We're not gonna kill it though.
Ooh, interesting.
Probably should have forged a different key. Now that I think about it. Now that I'm looking at cards in my hand in archives, perhaps I should have forged a different key.
Meh, you know. Ooh, interesting. um, some burst potential.
I always forget there is a key order in Ember Skies.
Yeah. Some options. I dislike doing that, but okay. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna do it. Mm,
Lots of cards.
lots of cards. Yeah, should have.
Oof. Oofka.
Oh, interesting. Hmm. In here somewhere, safe port. Red line. Ooh, do you have? You have You have bucks. I don't think. Well, I guess we'll see if you have archived another. Uh, of those. And then do I want to?
Interesting.
Yeah. Do I want to smash? Oh, it's a logos. Oh no, logos against all flags too. That's cool.
Yeah, the one in the discard pile
One in
is,
the
yeah.
discard pile. Yeah, yeah. Do I want to purge that one or do some more captures?
Purge. What are you purging? How are you
Yeah.
purging?
Steal your horoscope for a turn. So tempting. Committing Skippy to the board as well, though, means you just have to kill my Harvest Skipper. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's use the horoscope. Let's pitch this Thought Catcher and let's purge. A lot of good options here. I think I want the. I think I want this one.
Nice. Well, we are gonna go Skyborn.
Yep.
Gonna play two creatures.
Did you have the Scavitors in
Play
hand
a
too?
Seeker
No.
Missile. Red Line Rotation.
Oof.
Against all flags.
Oof. Brutal. Brutal. Nice.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Let's play out some duders here. Discard this one. Enemy creature. I'm behind by too much for it to matter now. I think I like tempted to cash in my board and then blow up the Soul Snatcher, but I don't think it's going to be good enough. Anyway, I do want this,
Nice.
and I do. I want that amber too. 4 more amber instead of this board. Yeah,
Nice.
it's a thing. We'll see. Okay.
Oof.
Your 15 is better than my 12, but we'll see. We'll see. Probably don't see very much.
Do you even have any Amber Control in your deck? Besides Capture Pips, right?
Not a ton. A lot of capture pips. So we'll see. Not that many capture pips though. Nice. I will take a key. Let's take the red key. And yeah, we're not going to. Oops.
Lots of nice cards.
Yeah. Fun. Nice, sir. Well played. Well played.
Thank you.
Oofa doofa. Good game. Well played. So, yeah, I don't know. In context of the topic, though, do you think I should have left the Soul Snatcher on board?
Yeah.
You think so?
I think with red line rotation,
playing
with
it,
this deck,
playing it at all with red line is pretty suspect. Yeah.
The beauty I found with this deck is that because of the in here somewheres, I can actually like wave the anchor is such a nice card into boards, which helps set up all these logos cards, and then you get rid of the Code Monkey, which was very smart. I think that was a very good play. He's recurring, double archiving every single turn, and then setting up for like a backup plan. And then there's not much like I didn't get a lot of value from. You got way more value from the Soul Snatcher than I did.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, in like absolute terms.
Yeah.
Though.
But the tempo line of the red line means that you just couldn't go to 6 at any point.
Yep. Yeah. It was
if you had creatures. If you had no creatures, you can go to 6.
It was a splashy play. I did it for the glory, but yeah. It's very suspect against red line for sure. I don't know. Part of me says maybe I bait the red line out and then I need it for Amber Generation, but I don't know. You have a lot of
Steel.
A lot of steel and a lot of pips and other ways to generate Amber in here too. This is a cool deck. I like it. Double against all flags with red line.
I thought it was a terrible deck when I first opened it. Actually, no, I thought it was a great deck when I first opened it, and then I played it a couple. I'm like, this deck's terrible. So I put it in a solo tournament, and then it just kept winning, and I was like, what's going on? What is this deck?
Yeah.
And I figured it out, I guess.
Do you find yourself like looping the in here somewheres and Echo Fly, doing those sorts of things to like set up big skyboard turns, or is it more like vet playing for value and less like?
Well, yeah, because you can play one in here somewhere, archive some cards, discard Echo Fly, archive in here somewhere, use the other in here somewhere, archive Echo Fly, and something else. So you're always netting 3 cards. and it's just the deck already archives a billion with the backup plan, the three skippies, and the code monkey, and the connective transfers. And so, yeah, there are some, and it's so hard to play around redline rotation, um,
Hmm.
especially with like safe ports. Um,
Yeah. Do you have any other
but
capture in here? I don't think these were capture pips. The code monkeys or the
no, there's no other capture.
skippies.
There is one.
The
What's the
Castlefies
card? It's
logos,
in my archives right now, actually.
saboteurs.
The energy vampirism, but that's on the
Mm.
opponents. The manifestation can choose capture pips from the opponent.
Ah, cool. Yeah, that's cool. 85. Get out of here.
It's not 85 now, right? Surely not. Okay, yeah.
Futures has 85.
I don't have features as. I apologize. I
Ah,
cheated.
games under protest.
Oh,
Goodness.
there's a capture pip on Wellstring. There you go.
Yeah, capture pip on Wellstring. Wellstring
Oh,
and
and
Code
Code
Monkey.
Monkey, because you can recur it. I remember that. You can keep recurring the capture.
That's cool. 18 nuggets as well. Very nice. And low on the creature control, though.
Yeah.
I
And
guess I may have helped you out a little bit on that front. That's interesting, but so much speed in practice with all the archiving. Hmm.
damn, I didn't realize SAS had changed that much. I think they changed redline rotation. Had to
They
have, right? Surely.
may have. It's at comes in at 7 now. Interesting. I mean, gosh,
Oh, no, no, no. Sorry. I actually do know. In here somewhere I got a buff.
in here somewhere got a buff. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
On SAS. So all my decks were in here somewhere. I'm pretty sure I got a buff.
Hmm.
Or at least with the if it's got a buff with cards that are good, so it's like it can archive better cards.
Wow,
I think
can go to
before they were like a 3 or 3.5.
two, 2.25 to 6 for in here somewhere. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
I
it's up to
mean,
6.
not saying it's unwarranted. Interesting. Weigh the Anchor. I don't think I've seen Weigh the Anchor get played before. Still
Such a
haven't,
nice
I
card.
guess, but it's cool. Yeah, a lot of fun tools to
I can
stall.
also like stun everything, play one of the Skippy to discard the Echo Fly.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a discard pip, and archive the way the anchor straight away. I can also do it with the Skulking Saboteur to archive Redline Rotation straight away,
Yep.
which I've done a fair few times in the tournament. Because there's just so much efficiency, you're going to get the cards set up together. And it's about figuring out which path you're going to take. And I realized you weren't going to play creatures, too many creatures, so I couldn't go the way the anchor backup plan line. So I
Mm-hmm.
went for I just play as many creatures as I could to try to force you to kill them.
Yep. Yeah. I think you were kind of pressing your advantage there well. Did it feel like you were playing from while ahead for a little bit at the end? I guess maybe.
Um, even though I had my as soon as I had my first key and I saw the Skyborn, I knew I was ahead
Hmm.
because I had Redline Rotation in my first hand, um, but no other Skyborn. But then I kept drawing Skyborn because I played Logos and Geistoid a couple turns in a row. I was handcrafting with Geistoid at the start, then accelerating with Logos after that.
Hmm. Right on. Cool, cool. I actually enjoy Horoscope a bit. I've only gotten a couple decks, but find that can be pretty impactful. I mean, as a role player card, not as like a oh my gosh, this is a bomb rare that has made my deck, but ends up
Yeah,
being
I agree.
relevant more often than you think.
I don't have because it's an action. Like you don't often get enough turns in
Mm-hmm.
a house to get a lot of value out of it. Because it's an action ability. So the value of it in this deck is not so high because just Geistoid isn't the house you're playing more than once because they're all actions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, you have a bunch of cool scraps though. Skippy, you may be wanting to play it. You got bucks, you got a couple Brillix ponders. So you get that efficiency, get the scrap effect, get to purge something.
Man, Brillix Ponder, the value of playing it or discarding it.
Yeah,
I mean, you can discard it with Oresco, which is nice.
right.
Um, you can discard it with the discard pip in Skyborn. But other than that, I think I play them in this deck because 1 in 3 chance, well, less than 1 in 3 chance compared to playing it unless I'm.
Yeah, just play it out and then hope you flip your deck before it gets shuffled back in. It may
Yep.
be a card that flies under the radar and then you get actually to reap with it. Yeah, one of those creatures that actually gets to reap.
Hmm. Yeah, bad card, right? I
Yeah,
like bad cards.
bad cards that get to reap right on.
Not Bad Penny though. Bad Penny can be discarded every time.
Hmm.
That was fun.
All right,
Should go make some
cool.
lunch.
Well, I'm gonna
Make
wrap
some
it up
nice
here.
lunch.
Thanks, folks, hanging out in the stream. Yeah, we'll wrap it up and we'll see you around the lab.
See ya.